believe on the 13th, so next week, the NCAA is supposed to vote on the one-time transfer rule. And what that is if you're transferring once, so if you're transferring for the first time, you will be eligible immediately. However, some inside the NCAA have suggested that they vote to decline the one transfer rule, the one-time transfer rule. So that could mean if JT, who is now in the transfer portal, as you mentioned, if he decides to transfer and if they vote no on this rule, then he would have to sit out a year, which would make it all more possible for him to return to USC, complete the season, complete the year, and get his degree early, and then re-enter the transfer portal where he would be eligible immediately the next year. But they still got to vote on it. It was a suggestion. They could still opt to vote yes on it and allow the one-time transfer rule. But right now, all indications are pointing that they're going to vote no, and that the current rule is going to stay in place, at least for the time being.
Matt Lowry on the line talking USC football from Conquest Chronicles. Please join him and the rest of the staff right there. Corey Foreman is the number one rated player in high school football. Number one rated player at his position, number one rated player overall. He is at the top of the heap from Corona, California, a player in which decades past USC would certainly be the front runner in retaining and keeping it home, but a player that they've lost certainly in recent years. But good news regarding the commitment to Clemson and him decommitting and opening things up. And there's a lot of talk that USC will be in play.
Yes, so Corey Foreman, who many know decommitted from Clemson, has been in constant contact from what he said with Vic Soto at USC. That came from an interview that he did, I believe, earlier this week. And USC's heavily been in the mix since the announcement of the decommitment. USC has been the top name there. And I believe this has to do with USC's resurgence in recruiting recently. They've changed up their staff. Everybody knows they've added some key pieces, and they've been hitting the recruiting trail very hard, to the point where there's a graphic, and I've seen most of the USC coaching staff put this up, where they kind of have a gate and a lock on the Los Angeles city limits. So they're trying to lock up and keep all the top talent in Los Angeles, trying to keep them home like they used to. And it starts with getting, as you mentioned, the number one player, the number one recruit in the 2021 class. So this is a huge positive for USC, and if they can land them, then that opens up a whole bunch of possibilities for USC's recruiting moving forward.
USC, of course, wants to lock it down to Southern California, as they have in the past, and most notably under Pete Carroll. Also, it's not a bad thing to go out throughout the rest of the country and grab some of the top players, like Kadarius Davis from Dallas, Texas, number 17 wide receiver, a top 100 player according to the 247 composite. So that always is rarefied air when you can go to the top 100 players in the country, and this kid fits that bill at 6 foot 193.
Yes, he's USC, as mentioned, has been going out of state. They've been recruiting Texas very hard as well. I think you could credit Todd Orlando with that one as well. He's been in Texas, just been recruiting like crazy, using his Texas networking from what he had when he was the defensive coordinator at University of Texas. But you have Kadarius Davis, 4-star wide receiver, as you mentioned. You also have Kalen Bullock, the 4-star athlete out of Pasadena, out of John Muir High School in Pasadena, who committed to USC. And another target that they have coming out of Texas, Hal Presley, has USC in his top 10, 3-star wide receiver. So USC's all over the map recruiting. they're pulling in top talent from everywhere right now. And again, it's showing that the resurgence of USC's recruiting is really paying dividends for them.
Yeah, so making the comment USC's all over the map hasn't necessarily been a good thing in the last couple of recruiting classes, but this time around it means a good thing in regards to, again, aim number one, priority number one is lockdown Southern California. As we know, California, Texas, and Florida produce the most and the best college football players and eventually NFL players. And then, of course, going out and getting some of these top flight guys. And you mentioned Todd Orlando at the University of Texas, the ties that he built and established there. I'm looking at Hal Presley, as you mentioned. He's in the mix as a top 80 wide receiver out of Texas, 65th rated player there. And Kalen Bullock has made his commitment, as you have explained, top 20 rated athlete right there. So, yeah, the recruiting news is good despite the limitations of not being able to meet with these kids in person and not having the ability to bring them on campus. So who's ever been ahead of the game in terms of virtual connections, FaceTime, and the like have been the teams and the programs that continue to march on and get commitments. And in this day and age, obviously, this is the way these kids were raised. So it's not as much of an adjustment for them as it is maybe for the rest of us in how they communicate.
Exactly. And right now, I believe USC's ranked in the top 5 nationally recruiting. I believe they're ranked number 1 in recruiting in the Pac-12 right now, I believe. So this is a huge turnaround for them right now, and everyone's happy about it. And that goes to credit to this new coaching staff revamping everything and just taking advantage of what's going on.
So, of course, it's very early on here as we just begin the month of May with a December national signing date and then followed by February. But to your point, USC in the top 10. And for critics of Clay Helton, understand that he did bring in 2 top 5 recruiting classes, but that was then followed up by like a 20th rated class, and then they plummeted to like a 50th rated class last year. So he's back at it, top 10 in the nation, number 1 in the Pac-12, with a long, long way to go to keep these commitments, but off to a tremendous start for USC in getting back in the Pac-12 South Division. And what we all want to see is how this all plays out on the field. And of course, 2020 is very much in question. But Mike Bowen, USC's athletic director, had a few comments toward that topic.
Yeah, so Mike Bowen recently has made comments about the upcoming season, and as every AD's been doing right now, a lot of people are unsure about the upcoming season. Well, he was asked about that, and he made a statement saying he's unsure if football is going to return in 2020. It's a lot of factors that are in play right now. First things first, you got to get students on campus. And right now, you're starting to see announcements that that schools are intending to start the fall semester with students on campus. Now, that's kind of up in the air. Those are things that can change right now. The NCAA have a COVID-19 guideline of slowly reopening and restarting things when it comes to student athletes and athletics. And in each and every detail, it starts with student athletes being able to go on campus. If students can't come on campus, then you can't really have sports take place right now. With the state of California, right now, I believe tomorrow they begin phase 2 of slow reopenings, which is opening essential places or retail businesses, but gyms and other places like movie theaters and stuff like that, that's not in phase 2. I believe those pop up in phase 3, along with sports with no fans in attendance, with no spectators in attendance. That's in phase 3. And it's unknown how far we are from being transitioned into phase 3 at this moment. So right now it's all in the air. I do know that 5 of the Pac-12 schools, which are the Arizona schools, the Washington schools, and Oregon, did announce that they intend on having students return on campus for the fall semester at this moment. I will say this, and this is a key thing, they intend on it. Those can change as months go on, but everybody's keeping an eye on it. This is positive news that you're hearing that 5 Pac-12 schools intend on having students return on campus, because that's a big factor on college football. But we're still a long ways away from figuring out if we're going to have a season. I think right now the prospect of it is they're preparing to have a season where not everybody will be ready to play football in 2020. So that's a possibility right there.
Yeah, and that's the big factor, is that these schools and these teams can't work independently. It's not like, okay, you've got a business and you sell hot dogs on the side of the road, you can go ahead because you're safe. Well, there there needs to be cooperation with 75 Power 5 teams, 130 FBS teams that all need each other to play football.
Yes.
So you need everybody else, or you can't do it. Or at the very least, each conference needs to be on the same page. And you're talking about geographic areas that span from, in this case, from the tip of Canada, basically in Washington State, all the way down into Arizona, obviously the border of Mexico, Southern California, and all the way out to Utah and Colorado. So you're talking about a huge area, and you're talking about needing to provide the same opportunities for all those programs to be competitive, and basically maybe it could be off by a few weeks or something, but generally be in the same time frame and calendar so that they can compete against each other. You don't want the advantage to go to one team that can jump on campus on June 1st and somebody else can't for till September. That's just not going to work. The other thing of note there is, and I'm not an expert on following this stuff, but I've certainly kept up with the news. And if there's a state and an area that is a huge population base that has done a tremendous job by looking at the numbers, it's California, because it was thought at the initial outbreak that, in addition to New York, that California would be hit hardest by this. And if anything, if you look at the overall numbers, California is going to be fairly high because the population is so enormous. It's over 40 million. But if you look at the per capita numbers, the death rate and the case rate in California is minuscule compared to the rest of the country. So the lockdown has worked in California, and certainly the weather there is going to help as well.
Yes, and that's a big thing that a lot of people got to understand. A lot of with California, thankfully, when they acted early, you didn't see high numbers as you expected. So that's a factor right there. But you've made a key point there that it's not going to be right for teams who or for a school who starts in July, who can get on campus in July, or that can play in July, and then everyone else can't start till September, or most schools can't start till September. I think what we might end up seeing, and this is a possibility, is that there could be a point where you could see a maybe a mid-September start. That could be a possibility. I still think there's several factors that have to come into play. One is widespread testing. And if they can't get the amount of tests for these athletes, then that's going to be a huge roadblock towards restarting things, because again, you want to make sure players can't get infected, or players don't get infected when they play. Remember, football is a contact sport. It's not a sport where you can have, you could be 6 feet apart or anything like that. It's a contact sport. So that's something that always is going to come into play, is the amount of testing that can be done for the student athletes, and to make sure that they possibly can't get infected, where they can spread it to other teammates, coaches, or to other students, and you have a huge outbreak on campus and it leads to something more. So we're still a ways away from even knowing if there's going to be football. There's still a lot of steps that has to be taken. So which is why he's saying he's unsure. And the same thing with the governor of Ohio saying the same thing, I think, the other day. But there are some positives there, and that's what it's looking like. But I would say they're trying to figure out every option to play football this fall.
Matt Lowry from Conquest Chronicles, breaking down USC athletics. Please join him at Conquest Chronicles. And, of course, lock it in here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Give us a like and certainly subscribe to the channel so you can keep updated every day on college football and lock in on those live streams each and every day. Matt, we appreciate it. You take care, sir.
Thank you. You too.